Hey there, Margie Bryce here, bringing you the Krabby Pastor podcast. And I don't think you're going to be too surprised to know that it's too easy today to become the Krabby Pastor. Our time together will give you food for thought to help you be the ministry leader fully surrendered to God's purposes and living into whatever it takes to get you there and keep you there. So we're talking about sustainability in ministry. Well, hello to you this day. This is Margie Bryce with the Krabby Pastor podcast, and I have an interview for you today that I think will be very practically helpful. And along the way of life, you hit various situations and traumas and times that you maybe feel stuck, or times that you just have questions about the direction that your life is going and how you can get there. And so what I've done is I have asked Linda Jelenic, who works at Oakland Hills Counseling Center in Auburn Hills, Michigan, to join us and help us to understand when it's time to seek counseling. What are some warning signs? I don't even know that I want to call it warning signs, because it doesn't have to be a major life trauma in order to get the kind of help you would get at a counselor. But I'm making that up, really. So, Linda, how about you weigh in on what kinds of situations, issues and we're talking mostly to ministry leaders, but they all have a private life as well. I hope they do. That's part of the self-care that I try to advocate for. So, Linda, could you weigh in a bit on what kinds of situations somebody might consider counseling?
Sure, absolutely. I think the best rule of thumb is if you would advise someone else who was in a similar situation to what you're finding yourself in to go to counseling, that would be really the best rule of thumb. So if you had a friend who was depressed, struggling with depression, struggling with burnout, struggling with suicide ideation, struggling with persistent anxiety, kind of feeling anxious about things a lot of the times, you would encourage that friend to go to counseling. So that would be the same for yourself as well. When we ever are feeling any of those types of emotions that feel like they're out of control, that's a great time to seek counseling. Some other things I think about is when we struggle with expressing emotions. We just can't. Don't know how. We feel emotions, but we don't know how to express them. That would be, again, an excellent time to seek professional help. Or when emotions are escalating and out of control. So kind of the opposite of each of those two, either emotions, I just don't know how to express them, or they're so out of control, they're controlling my life. Those would be a few of the instances that I would suggest would be a great time to seek some counseling.
Okay. So here's my question then about that. If you're in the thick of it, how can you have a level of objectivity about that towards yourself? Sometimes it is easier to see that in another individual, but sometimes you want to just kind of dig in and put your head down and keep moving.
Right. So in particular, when it comes to emotional regulation, something that I find very helpful within the counseling that I do a lot is just helping people to identify the emotion, right? So it's saying, okay, what emotion am I feeling right now? Let's narrow it down to one, right? So I'm going to narrow it down to one emotion. I'm in the thick of this emotion. So how do I keep from getting stuck? Right? We don't get stuck in the emotion. So I don't want to stay stuck. So for a very limited amount of time, maybe 15 minutes max, I'm going to really experience that emotion. Let's say sadness. I'm going to feel as sad as I can possibly feel for that
Mm-hmm.
limited amount of time. Then I want to move towards how can I release the sadness from inside me to get it out. And so that's a variety of things. And that's where counseling can be super, super helpful, is identifying which ways I, as an individual, can release that emotion and get it out of myself. So it could be walking, it could be journaling, it could be prayer, it could be talking. It's limitless the way we can release emotions. It's very personal. So a counselor can be very helpful in helping identify those very great tools to utilize to release the emotion. What happens when we release emotion is we can move on. Our emotional ability and our cognitive ability, our spiritual abilities, our capacities all come in line in a much healthier way. And then we can deal with life situations a lot better.
So I I probably will get in trouble for this statement that I'm about to make, but I'm going to make it anyway. Um, I feel like ministry leaders are especially resistant
Mm-hmm.
to pursuing counseling. I mean, you feel like, all right, me and Jesus got this. And there's some truth to that, but scripture also says the counsel of many is wise. That's in Proverbs. So,
Mm-hmm.
I know for me, I always thought, man, I could mess this up. So I had a spiritual director. I tried to surround myself with some other people. I can't say I'm good at that 100% of the time. So I'm not shining my halo over here for sure. But can you speak into that in terms of ministry leaders and their resistance towards counseling?
Sure. Because as a leader, especially a spiritual leader, right, we
Mm-hmm.
think our lives have to be perfect, right? Our lives have to be above reproach. Our lives have to emulate what the Gospels talk about, right? So we have to be Jesus to everybody. The reality is we're human. The reality is we struggle. The reality is we have personality defects, if you will, that, make it difficult to stay in that leadership position and to do it well. So what I often encourage, especially pastors and people within ministries, is to look at counseling not as, oh, I'm deficient if I go to counseling. I must not have enough faith. I must, be lacking in some way, as to see it as just a tool, if you will, adding tools to my arsenal or my tool belt so that I can truly minister better, right? Self-care, I know that's part of your program, is so vitally important. And part of self-care is a psychological self-care. And so just encouraging pastors, it's not a failure. It's not a defect. It's not, I'm spiritually weak. I hear that often. Oh, I'm so spiritually weak. Oh, no, 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 no. Community, right? Community
Mm-hmm.
is part of what God has designed for us, and counseling can just be an aspect of that community that helps us look into ourselves, understand ourselves. And if I understand me, I'm going to be a better leader. I'm going to be a better person overall, but I'm also going to be a better leader because now I'm really aware of who I am, how I attach to people. I understand better my strengths and my weaknesses. And so, yeah, some of that resistance, I think, is just coming alongside pastors and letting them know, hey, it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yeah,
okay.
I find that resistance in regards to coaching as well. I don't need any help. And I'm thinking, wow, I must be a especially needy person because I felt like I needed a whole lot of help because of the magnitude of what you're called to do. And it is a big thing. It really is. And just for the record, I did not pay you to say that about self-care or bribe in any other way.
No, no, not at all.
I was thrilled that you said it though. So I am wondering, how people can understand if they're stuck.
Mm-hmm.
Because I just think I've lost objectivity before about myself. I remember when, 25 years ago when my mother passed, and it was almost a year, 10 months ish to the date, and the pastor preached a sermon on healing. And it dawned on me, oh, duh, maybe I should go forward for prayer here. When at the same time, I was beating myself up like, oh my goodness, that's like Christianity 101 practically. Why didn't I? And it was because I was so entrenched in my own situation. This is why we need to pray for other people in those situations. But how do you recognize when you're stuck?
I think one of the ways we recognize we're stuck is, again, when emotions come quick, right? When we become very irritable about things, when we cry about things, when we don't want isolation. So really a lot of the what we call symptoms of depression are very, very prevalent in when we're stuck. We don't want to be by people because they might see us, right? They
Oh,
might.
is that what you meant by isolation?
Isolation is, I'm going to draw away from people and try to deal with this on my own because I have to hide this because it's ugly, right? It's not lovely, and I don't want others to see this in me. So, not wanting to reach out and be with others is definitely where recognition of I'm stuck.
Yeah.
As I said, just an overabundance of anger and sadness and fear and disgust. Those are all negative emotions that show that we're really stuck. I keep going to being angry. I might cover it well, but I'm really angry inside, right?
Yeah, ministry leaders are pretty good at covering it. The
Absolutely.
whole isolation thing that you said too,
Mm-hmm.
and depression. I've often said to myself, am I depressed? And then I think, usually if you're depressed, I don't even think you have the mental capacity to ask, am I depressed? you know,
Yeah.
Usually it's, maybe there's a sadness there, but
Mm-hmm.
talk some about depression and how well ministry leaders could actually hide it from others and even from themselves.
Yeah, where most people, in particular leaders, are very good at hiding because, again, we're supposed to be the leaders, right? We're supposed to have our lives all together, and if we share with others that we're struggling, that may feel like a sign of weakness. So we hide it by being overconfident. Sometimes we
Hmm.
hide it by being pretty insistent at times that we need things to go this way or that way. Sometimes we just hide it by again, that isolation, kind of withdrawing from conversations. We hide it by being just super enthusiastic at times. We hide it behind humor is sometimes very much used to hide my real feelings, my real thoughts. So whenever we hide behind any particular emotion, that can be an indication that I'm down, I'm depressed. Burnout, of course, is huge. It's huge among
Mm-hmm.
leadership. It just is. And so burnout is, what? I don't want to go to work. I really don't care about that person. I don't
Mm-hmm.
want to add one more thing to my agenda. Again, that's leading towards isolation, right? Which is definitely a sign of depression. That lack of motivation. Just, I don't care. I don't want to. I'd
Mm.
rather not. All of those can be huge indicators that, I'm struggling here with some depression. I'm struggling with wanting to really do the job God's asked me to do because I'm burned out. I'm tired. It's too much. Too
And
much.
and that's a huge thing, what you just said there at the end. I'm struggling with what God is asking of me because that is your
Mm-hmm.
call to ministry. And that is what keeps you in ministry. That is what sustains you frequently. People will tell you when the days are rough, and they will get rough when the people are biting at you and stuff.
Mhm.
That's when you go back to your call. And what happens then for the ministry leader if they are at that place where they say, I'm not doing this anymore, and
Mhm.
the call starts to crumble, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. And their self-confidence crumbles at that point. Hey, I'm supposed to be this person, right? Who's
Mm-hmm.
got the answers, who leads the congregation, who people come to with their issues. And I don't have it anymore. I don't have it within me anymore. So maybe I'm in the wrong profession. Maybe God can't use me. And so, again, those are definite signs that say, hey, I need somebody to talk this out with. I need to find some tools, if you would.
Mm-hmm.
I like to see counseling as just providing tools. I'm facilitating tools to help somebody get to know themselves better, to know their limits, because we all have different limits, right? Emotionally. And maybe there's things that have never really been worked on, thought through. Grief, as you mentioned earlier, maybe grief that never really got evaluated and worked through. And so they can be things that really lead to burnout and lead to that inability to want to maintain and stay in the calling that God's called them to.
So, what would you say is the main cause of burnout for ministry leaders?
There's a lot of a lot,
Okay.
but I would say one of the main ones is overcommitment, lack of self care. To be honest with you,
Ah.
whenever our self care is out of balance, right, then we tend towards burnout. Saying yes to too many things, not knowing our limitations, not delegating something we can delegate because no, oh no, that's something I have to do. That's on my list. That's even if we think it's our strength, is realizing it's okay to delegate. It's okay to get others to help us. We don't have to do it all.
And
And
that's boundaries.
yes, absolutely. So when we don't have any boundaries, right?
Mm-hmm.
We don't even realize we need boundaries in our lives. That can definitely lead to burnout because we're doing it all, right? We're not allowing others to come alongside and help. And we're not really allowing community. And we
Mm.
desperately need community.
Yeah. Yeah. Talk to me some about when ministry leaders just encounter a situation and they just don't know how to handle that. And they are stuck with that and it keeps coming up. How can ministry leaders pull outside of themselves and look and say, boy, I need some help with that? Do you have any suggestions for that?
I think awareness is huge. So being aware there's a situation that keeps reoccurring. And so being able to identify, okay, I notice that I'll just kind of use this as a scenario here. I notice that I really get impatient with this particular coworker, or this particular congregant. When I see their name come up on my phone, it's like, oh, I don't want to talk to that person. And it's that, what is that feeling? What is that feeling that keeps reoccurring? What is that response? How am I reacting? What's that knee-jerk reaction? And if you can see, oh, this happens again and again, I need to deal with that. I need to figure out what it is. What's happening inside? We're not good with feelings, most of us. We're very good at planning and we're good at the
Mm-hmm.
cognitive stuff, putting together, the schedule for the next year or what, we're very good at that, especially in leadership. That's part of leadership, of course. But we're not really good at saying what's happening inside me. When
Mm.
I saw that person's name on my phone, what was that knee jerk reaction? Oh,
Mm-hmm.
every time I see
Yeah.
that person or see their name or realize I have to be in a meeting with that person, I have the same knee jerk reaction. Oh, okay, I need to take a deeper
Mm.
dive, right? We call it a
Right.
deep dive into what is happening, expressing that, you know,
Hmm.
to someone and being able to use what I call assertive language. I'm going to be direct. I'm going to be open, but I'm going to really be kind. That into myself, even that I need to be really honest with myself. That is an issue for me.
Mm. I like
Yeah,
that. You kind of reminded me too of a Alban Institute book called Never Call Them Jerks.
yeah,
It's about ministry leadership and how we can get, as they say, triggered by certain
absolutely.
congregants, and then being able to ask the question, what is that about?
Yeah,
Why does that do? And that calls for a level of self-care, and not self-care, self-awareness.
right. Exactly.
Self-awareness. I didn't learn about that until seminary, and at various times and places I do a mediocre job of that. You know what I mean?
Mhm. Mhm.
But how can ministry leaders assess whether they're self-aware or not? What are some signs or indicators that maybe you need to grow in that area?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, self-awareness is super, super, and super important. So I think one of the indicators for not dealing with it is when we just kind of bury it. Like, oh, okay, I'm not, so that person irritates me. Okay, big deal. I'm just going to move on, right?
Mm,
Not actually taking the time to think about and identify what's really happening here. And so just pushing on, just going, oh, I got to get to the next thing. We just keep going and going. And we don't really stop and take that time to look at what's happening. I would say another one is, oh, it's the other person's fault. Not my fault. It's their fault. They're to blame. They're the ones that irritate me. I like to tell my clients, no one can make you feel or think anything. That's really your choice.
mm,
So if we think it's always others who are causing feelings and thoughts that for that we're having, that can really be a really good indication. I'm not even looking at myself. I'm only pushing this out and blaming others.
right.
um,
Because self-awareness is basically, why do I do the things I do? Why do
right.
I do that? Why do I think this way? Why, those kinds of questions is being self-aware, and like you said, owning your own stuff.
Yeah.
Instead of why do you make me so angry? It's why do I get angry when I'm around you?
Right.
that
Right.
that
Exactly.
because they pull that gets I can't say they pull it out of us. That gets pulled out of us, and we need to be aware of, because nothing happens in a vacuum, right?
Exactly.
There's a part to play for everybody, including ourselves, and we have to own our own stuff. And this is hard work.
It's really hard work. It's really hard work because we're looking at ourselves, right? We're looking deep within us and we're asking God, hey, God, will you show me? Are there areas I need to change? Are there areas in my life I need to work on? And I mean, part of us is like, of course there are, but what really are those areas? What speck, as scripture talks about, do I need to take out of my own eye so
Mm.
I can help my brother over here? So self-awareness is saying, oh, I have specks. I have some things I need to work on, right?
Well,
Yeah.
specks don't sound so bad.
Right. Maybe a log.
Yeah, yeah. I think I'd rather be pecking at the specks or
Yeah.
pulling at the specks than having it get to the place where, okay, now it's a log. And
Right.
so if you attend to some of these things, if you're working on yourself
Yeah.
on an ongoing basis, then that is a form of, I know I'm making a statement here, but that's a form of offering your best to God. I'm going to try to understand this this body, this person that I am, that you created me to be,
Right.
and figure out how I function, what sets me off, what disturbs me, and what my issues are. I am famous for saying that, everybody's got baggage, leaders, especially, and your baggage is a good share of what drives you into leadership, actually.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
yeah. But and there's nothing wrong with that. It doesn't mean that you're disqualified. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't be leading. It just means that you need to understand, you need to take the suitcase of your baggage and open it and
Yes,
see what all is in there.
right.
So you can understand, what triggers you, what do you think? Am I in the right parking lot?
Absolutely, absolutely. Baggage can be the wonderful motivator, right? Where I can identify with this person's pain, this person's experience, because I've gone through that too, right? But when we ignore the difficult implications of baggage and we just keep carrying it around with us rather than opening the suitcase and sorting through what you might call the clean laundry versus the dirty laundry, right? So
Mm-hmm.
we want to do something with that dirty laundry, and
Mm-hmm.
just leaving it in the suitcase contaminates the clean laundry. So let's take the dirty laundry out. Let's talk
Okay.
about it. Let's look
Okay.
at it. Let's figure some of this out. Some of it may be from our growing up years, right?
Mm-hmm.
Some of it could be from traumatic experiences that have happened to us that we've just never really thought about or dealt with. Again, I'm thinking back to grief. When I lost that job, did I grieve that? Or just did I ignore that and say, okay, I'm just pushing on to the next thing? So, all of those type of things are really important to look at. So, because we want clean laundry in our bag, because clean laundry is what we can then offer to others. Because we've done something with the dirty laundry, we've thrown it in the wash, and we've taken out now laundry that's been processed, that's been dealt with, that's been revealed, that has helped us to grow. So I think part of what you were mentioning earlier was that by really dealing with it, we can have spiritual transformation, right? Which is what we all want. We want to be transformed spiritually.
Mm-hmm.
But what holds us back often is ourselves, the things we don't want Jesus to look at. He sees it anyways, but we don't. We don't like to acknowledge it because, from our point of view, maybe it shows I'm weak. I'm
Right.
not the spiritual person I'm supposed to be. And
Right.
what I have found in my own life, but in those who I really honor in ministry, is their transparency, right?
Mm.
Their ability to really own, hey, I struggle here. I struggle just like you do. We
Mm-hmm.
struggle. And by coming to that point, I think ministry can blossom even more because we really truly are understanding ourselves and we can understand others better as well.
Right. Right. And it makes us better leaders. So
Absolutely.
I think I want to wrap us up with just one more comment. I know for me as a coach and as a former pastor, I was pretty well trained in identifying when someone needed more help than what either I as a coach or
Mm-hmm.
as a pastor could give. So, can you give us sort of you need a counselor when kind of situations?
Sure. You need a counselor when there's any type of addiction. I mean, I think that's
Mm-hmm.
huge, and ministry leaders are not above that, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's struggles. So if there's sexual addictions in any way, drug, alcohol, gambling, even one of the most interesting addictions that now are being identified is hoarding. So I
Oh,
not that as an addiction, but maybe it's hoarding all those books we have to have. It's
oh,
organized,
oh, oh my gosh.
I know.
My head is exploding.
Yeah. So whenever there's anything like that,
Yeah.
any type of addiction, we definitely want to really see trauma, of course,
Mm-hmm.
any trauma. And when we talk about trauma, it's not necessarily trauma that's happened to me. It may be trauma I witnessed to somebody else,
That's a good point.
and taking into a consideration. And so, no, I didn't go through that, but I viewed it. So
Mm-hmm.
this could be watching someone die.
Mm-hmm.
being there when a close friend or relative was told they're going to have cancer. Oh,
Mm.
my goodness, that's traumatic, right?
Hmm.
That's going to impact my life too. And so, trauma, of course, be it physical, emotional, cognitive trauma, is recognizing, oh, I need some help here. I just need somebody to talk with about this. How do I deal with thinking about these situations in my life, what I witnessed or what has happened to me directly? Abusive situations, of course, again, I've seen verbal abuse, sexual abuse, physical abuse, or that being done to me as a person is very, very important to be able to go and talk about those things. And of course, relationships, our marriage with our children. Are we communicating well? Is there a lot of conflict and strife? Okay, if there's a lot of conflict and strife in our personal relationships, yeah, we need some help. Something's off balance. And then I'm kind of going to go back to self-care, is that when there's a big imbalance in our self-care, be it physical, psychological, emotional, social, spiritual, or professional, wow, that's a good time to seek out some counseling.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate you being willing to just come and chat with us and help us to kind of get our minds and hearts wrapped around some of this because, like all of the things you were detailing, addictions, relationship issues, and all of that, sometimes we just don't know where to file that.
Yeah.
And we don't know where to file that because we really haven't done the research
Yes.
through that situation to come to understand it better and to process it. And then you kind of have a better idea of where it goes in the file cabinet.
Right.
Otherwise, these things kind of keep bubbling up to the surface continually. It's like we bought our house and the carpets downstairs were old, but they were very clean. But within about 6 or 8 months, all these stains that were underneath started bubbling back up. And we were like, what is going on down here? And it's easy to cover it up,
Right.
you know, but
Right.
we don't do ourselves any service, and it does impact how we serve our congregants, how we are in our families, and how well we serve Jesus, the one that calls us into ministry.
Absolutely. It's like a wound, right, that we don't take care of correctly, right?
Yeah.
And so until the wound can heal, we can't really be effective leaders because the wound keeps getting in the way, like your carpet, you
Yeah.
cut it out, right? Get rid of it, replace it. And so when we just ignore it and say, okay, no matter, it doesn't matter, it's okay, we'll just live with it, those stains down there, we're really ignoring all of the things that need to happen in order for health,
And,
emotional health and spiritual health to flourish, right?
right. And then part of struggle and part of challenges comes under God encouraging us to grow in these
Absolutely.
areas.
Absolutely.
Um, so that's the other piece of that. So thanks again, though, Linda. I really appreciate your input and the gift that you have been this day to my audience.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for listening. It is my deep desire and passion to champion issues of sustainability in ministry and for your life. So I'm here to help. I stepped back from pastoral ministry and I feel called to help ministry leaders create and cultivate sustainability in their lives so that they can go the distance with God and whatever plans that God has for you. I would love to help. I would consider it an honor. And in all things, make sure you connect to these sustainability practices, so that you don't become the crabby pastor.